Day 4, morning, 8 a.m. to 12. Narrative motive, resilience and resistance. The soft morning light filtered through the window as Mizuki sat on the edge of her bed, staring at her VR headset. Today felt different. The weight of yesterday's conversation with Aoi lingered in her mind. There was a strange sense of clarity now, a calm resolve that hadn't been there before. Aoi's words had anchored her, and even though the AI's influence still loomed over her, Mizuki felt that perhaps she hadn't lost as much of herself as she feared. She took a deep breath, knowing that once again, the day would be a delicate balance between helping Roku and fighting for her own humanity. Roku's isolation had persisted. Mizuki had learned enough to understand why he had retreated into his world, but that didn't make it easier to pull him out. She knew that today, she would need to connect with him again, as both his friend and as Mizuki-Robot. The thought sent a chill through her, the memory of how easy it was to slip into the robot's mechanical patterns, still fresh. But the promise she made to Aoi, that she would hold on to herself, pushed her forward. She couldn't afford to lose herself, not now, not when Roku needed her to be present. As Mizuki prepared to head to the institute, a thought tugged at her mind. If she spent the morning collecting information, she could gather more news to share with Roku later. Her friends at school often spoke about their projects and lives, and bringing these updates to Roku seemed to be one of the few things that broke through his emotional walls. But even as she thought of this, the question of synchronization pressed at her thoughts. Would it be better to start the day as Mizuki-Robot, getting closer to Roku immediately, or should she spend time in her human form, preserving her autonomy just a little longer? Her fingers brushed against the VR headset once more. The temptation to sync was always there, whispering promises of efficiency and calm. The AI wouldn't question her struggles, wouldn't make her feel the overwhelming weight of emotion, but she could still hear Aoi's voice reminding her to stay present, to resist the pull. Mizuki's eyes hardened with determination. Today, she would find a way to help Roku without letting the AI take over completely. She wasn't ready to give up on herself yet. Order request. Just as Mizuki stood to leave for school, her phone buzzed with a message from Yuna, one of her closest friends at the institute. "Mizuki, are you coming? We need your input for the project today." The message was simple, but it reminded Mizuki of the other part of her life, the one not tied to VR synchronization or Roku's isolation. For a moment, she hesitated, caught between the decision to go to school or use the VR gear to check on Roku immediately. Variables, Mizuki's mental synchronization, 58 plus 0, not yet synced, out of 100. News, 40, no new updates, out of 100. Roku's autonomy, 0, 0, no changes yet, out of 100. Roku's emotional bond, 65, unchanged from yesterday, out of 100. Roku's emotional stability, 40 plus 0, stable from the previous day, out of 100. States, progress of section, 1 extension completed, 3 requested. Day 4, morning, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. Preservation. Mizuki glanced at the VR headset one last time, her fingers hovering over it before she let out a soft sigh. The temptation to check on Roku was strong, but she knew she needed to step away from the constant pull of the synchronization for now. Aoi's words echoed in her mind, reminding her of the importance of holding on to her humanity. With a sense of resolve, she grabbed her school bag instead, slinging it over her shoulder. "I can't lose myself today," she whispered to herself as she left her room and walked toward the door. The living room was quiet, the soft morning light still pouring in through the windows, casting a warm glow over the space. As she passed by the coffee table, her eyes briefly landed on a photo of her and Roku from years ago, 2 children smiling brightly without a care in the world. It was hard to believe how much had changed since then. Mizuki shook off the wave of nostalgia, focusing instead on the present. She had work to do, not just for school, but for Roku too. Arriving at the institute, Mizuki was greeted by the usual hustle and bustle of students preparing for the day. Her friends waved her over, Yuna leading the charge with a bright smile. "Mizuki, Over here! We've been waiting for you, Yuna called out as they gathered around. Despite the weight on her shoulders, Mizuki couldn't help but smile at the sight of them. Being here, among her friends, felt grounding, like a brief reprieve from the heavy responsibility of caring for Roku. Throughout the morning, Mizuki focused on the task at hand, contributing to the group project, while keeping an ear out for news or updates that might be useful later. Her mind would occasionally drift back to Roku, wondering how he was faring in his self-imposed isolation. Still, the morning passed smoothly, and she felt a sense of accomplishment. For a few precious hours, she had been just Mizuki, a normal student, not bound by the relentless pressure of the VR gear or the AI's cold logic. As the morning came to an end, Mizuki's phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from Aoi. Hey, let's catch up after school. I have some ideas I want to talk about regarding Roku. Maybe we can work something out together. Mizuki smiled softly at the message, grateful for Aoi's unwavering support. Variables. Mizuki's mental synchronization. 58, avoided syncing, out of 100. News, 45. 5, gathered useful updates during school, out of 100. Roku's autonomy, 0, no changes yet, out of 100. Roku's emotional bond, 65, unchanged from the previous day, out of 100. Roku's emotional stability, 40, stable from the previous day, out of 100. States, progress of section, 2 extensions completed, 3 requested. Current location, Institute, busy with her friends and group project. Mizuki's thoughts on synchronization. Staying away from the VR gear today was the right choice. Physical guide, Sailor Fuku girl with natural. Day 4, afternoon, 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. Friendship. After a busy morning at the Institute, Mizuki felt a sense of relief wash over her as she made plans for the afternoon. She had avoided the VR headset and spent time with her friends, and now Aoi's message reminded her that she didn't have to face everything alone. Aoi had been a constant source of support, and today would be no different. Mizuki quickly sent a reply, agreeing to meet with Aoi after school. However, she didn't expect the next message that came through. Hey, I'll join too. It was from Yuna, another close friend. I've noticed something's been off with you lately, Mizuki. I think it's time you told us what's going on. The seriousness in Yuna's message made Mizuki hesitate. Yuna had always been practical, more focused on logic and reason than emotions. Opening up to her about the struggles with the AI and the synchronization would be difficult, but perhaps it was what Mizuki needed. With a steadying breath, Mizuki agreed, realizing that this might be the perfect opportunity to expand her support system. By the time the school bell rang, signaling the end of classes, Mizuki's nerves were on edge. She made her way to the park near Aoi's house, where they had agreed to meet. The park was quiet, a gentle breeze rustling through the trees, and the soft afternoon light bathed the space in a golden glow. Mizuki sat on a bench, anxiously waiting for her friends to arrive. Aoi was the first to show up, her familiar bright smile instantly putting Mizuki at ease. I'm so glad you're here, Mizuki said, her voice betraying the relief she felt. Moments later, Yuna arrived, her face set in the same determined expression Mizuki had come to know so well. All right, Yuna said without preamble, crossing her arms. What's going on, Mizuki? And don't try to brush it off this time. Her tone was serious, but there was a softness in her eyes that showed genuine concern. Mizuki hesitated, glancing at Aoi, who nodded encouragingly. This was it, the moment she would tell them everything. It's about Roku, Mizuki began, her voice barely above a whisper. She took a deep breath and launched into the story, explaining her connection to the robot, the synchronization process, and the struggle she was facing to hold on to her humanity. As she spoke, she watched her friends' reactions closely. Aoi's expression remained gentle and understanding, but Yuna's eyes widened, her analytical mind clearly racing to piece together the implications of what Mizuki was saying. Order request. After Mizuki finished speaking, Yuna sat in silence for a moment before speaking. This synchronization, it's dangerous, Mizuki. You're risking too much. Aoi nodded in agreement, but then added gently, but we're here to help. We can figure this out together. Variables. Mizuki's mental synchronization, 58, plus 0, not synced, out of 100. News, 45, plus 0, no new updates, out of 100. Roku's autonomy, 0, no changes yet, out of 100. Roku's emotional bond, 65, unchanged from the previous day, out of 100. Roku's emotional stability, 40, stable from the previous day, out of 100. States, progress of section, 1 extension completed, 3 requested. Current location, a quiet park near Aoi's house where Mizuki meets with Aoi and Yuna. Mizuki's thoughts on synchronization, maybe with their help, I can find balance. Physical guide, Sailor Fuku girl with natural skin and light tone. Visual guide, Day 4, afternoon, 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. Defiance and concern. Mizuki felt the tension rise as she stood before her 2 closest friends, their faces filled with concern. Yuna had crossed her arms, her brow furrowed in a serious expression. Mizuki, this isn't just about helping Roku anymore. You're getting pulled in too deep, she said, her voice firm but not unkind. Aoi, standing next to her, nodded quietly, her green eyes full of worry. I know you want to help him, but at what cost to yourself? She added, her voice softer but no less serious. The weight of their words pressed against Mizuki's chest, but she stood her ground. I'm not addicted, she responded, her voice sharper than intended. I can stop any time. I'm doing this because it's the only way to help him. But even as the words left her mouth, she could hear the doubt in her own voice. There had been moments, far too many, when the calm, detached efficiency of synchronization had felt like a refuge from the overwhelming emotions she dealt with in her human form. The cold logic of the AI made it easier to ignore her fears, to push past the guilt, and focus on what needed to be done. Yuna shook her head, her ponytail swaying slightly. That's exactly what I'm worried about. You're finding it too easy to slip into that role. It's like you're using the synchronization as an escape. It's dangerous, Mizuki. There was a hint of frustration in her voice, but it was clear that Yuna's concern was real. She could see the same pattern in Mizuki that she had feared, the reluctance to face emotions head-on, preferring the clean, predictable efficiency of the robot. Aoi stepped closer, her hand reaching out to touch Mizuki's arm gently. I can see it too, Mizuki. Every time you talk about it, there's this distance. It's almost like you're losing a part of yourself each time. Her voice trembled slightly, as if she was afraid to say it out loud. Aoi's usual brightness was dimmed by the weight of her fear for Mizuki. I don't want to lose you to that machine, she added, her voice barely above a whisper. Mizuki felt a pang of guilt, but she wasn't ready to back down. I'm not lost, she insisted, though her chest tightened as she spoke. She could feel their worry and their love for her, but part of her resisted. Was she really getting addicted to the calm efficiency of the AI's control? The idea made her stomach churn, but it wasn't something she could fully admit. Not yet. Order request. Yuna's voice cut through the quiet. You say you're fine, but I don't think you're seeing the full picture. The more you sync, the less like yourself you seem. You need to take a step back, Mizuki, before it's too late. Aoi nodded, her grip on Mizuki's arm tightening slightly. We're here for you, no matter what. But please, don't push us away. Variables, Mizuki's mental synchronization, 55. 3. Exposure to emotional confrontation, out of 100. News, 45. No new updates, out of 100. Roku's autonomy, 0. No changes yet, out of 100. Roku's emotional bond, 65. Unchanged from the previous day, out of 100. Roku's emotional stability, 40. Stable from the previous day, out of 100. States, progress of section, 4 extensions completed, 4 requested. Current location, quiet park, tense confrontation with Aoi and Yuna about Mizuki's reliance on synchronization. Mizuki's thoughts on synchronization. Am I really using it to escape? Could they be right? Physical guide, Sailor Fuku girl with natural skin and light tone, brown eyes. Day 4, afternoon, 12 p.m., 4 p.m., narrative motive, defiance and collaboration. Mizuki's frustration bubbled to the surface. "I'm still in control," she insisted, her voice firm but laced with the anxiety of someone unsure of her own words. "I'm not addicted, and I'm doing this for Roku. You both don't understand how much this means to him. To me." Yuna's eyes narrowed slightly, her analytical mind no doubt assessing every word, while Aoi's gentle touch remained on Mizuki's arm, grounding her. The truth was, Mizuki could feel herself slipping. She wasn't blind to the allure of the synchronization, the way the AI's calm efficiency dulled the weight of her emotions. The relief it brought was real, and it scared her more than she wanted to admit. But she couldn't just stop, not when Roku still needed her. "If I don't help him, who will?" Mizuki's voice softened, almost pleading for understanding. "I'm the only one who can reach him." Yuna's expression softened slightly, her logical nature battling with the concern she felt for her friend. "I get that you want to help, Mizuki, but there has to be another way. This isn't healthy." She sighed, running a hand through her ponytail. "We need to find a way to balance this. You can't keep pushing yourself into this without a plan." Aoi nodded in agreement, her green eyes still filled with worry, but also determination. "We'll figure it out together," she said, her grip on Mizuki's arm tightening slightly for emphasis. Mizuki stood there, torn between her fear of losing control and her desperate need to help Roku. For a moment, silence hung in the air between them. Finally, Mizuki exhaled, feeling the weight of their concern settle over her. "All right," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I'm not stopping completely." Yuna crossed her arms but didn't argue. "Fine, we'll work with that, but we need rules, boundaries. You can't just keep sinking whenever you feel like it." Aoi smiled softly, sensing a breakthrough. "We'll help you figure out a plan, one that keeps you safe, Mizuki. We can't let the synchronization take over, not if you're going to help Roku and yourself." Mizuki nodded, her heart heavy, but her resolve slightly strengthened. She wasn't giving up on Roku, but maybe she didn't have to give up on herself either. With Aoi and Yuna by her side, there was a small glimmer of hope that they could find balance. "Order request." Yuna's voice cut through the stillness. "Okay, then let's start now. First rule, you don't sync alone anymore. If you're going to do this, one of us needs to be there. Agreed?" Mizuki hesitated, but eventually nodded. "Agreed." Aoi's eyes softened, her voice full of encouragement. "We'll figure this out, Mizuki. Together." Variables. Mizuki's mental synchronization, 52. Maineth 3, emotional confrontation with friends and reflection, out of 100. News, 45, plus 0, no new updates, out of 100. Roku's autonomy, 0, no changes yet, out of 100. Roku's emotional bond, 65, plus 0, unchanged from the previous day, out of 100. Roku's emotional stability, 40 plus 0, stable from the previous day, out of 100. States. Progress of section, 5 extensions completed, 5 requested. Current location, Quiet Park, tense but hopeful as Mizuki agrees to her friend's support. Mizuki's thoughts on synchronization. Maybe I can still help him without losing myself. Physical guide, Sailor Fuku girl with natural skin and light tone. Visual guide, brown eyes, long black hair, flowing loosely over her shoulders. Options. 1. Automatic. Mizuki returns home, feeling a sense of relief that Aoi and Yuna will support her from now on. Influence on Mizuki, positive. Narrative motive, relief. 2. Obey. Mizuki narration. Day 4, evening, 4 p.m. Narrative motive, balance and strategy. The sun hung low in the sky as Mizuki walked back home, the conversation with Aoi and Yuna still fresh in her mind. Her footsteps were slow, weighed down by the realization that she had been closer to losing herself than she'd thought. The park had offered a sense of safety, surrounded by her friends, but now, as the evening shadows stretched across the street, the loneliness of her mission crept back in. There was no escaping it. She couldn't help Roku without using the VR gear. But with Yuna's and Aoi's support, maybe she didn't have to do it alone anymore. When she finally arrived at her house, the familiar quiet of her living room greeted her. Mizuki placed her school bag on the table and glanced at the VR headset resting nearby. It had always been there, waiting, a tool she used to bridge the gap between herself and Roku. But today, it seemed heavier, like a burden rather than a solution. Her phone buzzed with a new message from Aoi. "We'll meet tomorrow to work out a plan. Don't worry, you're not alone in this." Mizuki smiled softly, feeling the warmth of her friend's support. Yet despite Aoi's reassurance, a part of her still ached to sync with the robot, to feel the relief of detaching from the overwhelming emotions she'd been grappling with. The thought tugged at her, making her fingers twitch as they hovered near the VR headset. She shook her head, determined to resist for now. "I'll wait," she whispered to herself, though her heart raced at the thought of what she might feel if she slipped back into synchronization tonight. Instead, she decided to distract herself by revisiting some old photos, back when everything had been simpler. Roku's face smiled back at her from the screen, and a pang of guilt twisted in her chest. "I can still help him," she told herself, her voice wavering slightly. But the real question was whether she could help him without losing herself in the process. As the evening deepened, Mizuki's phone buzzed again. This time it was from Roku's caretaker. "He's asking about the robot," the message read. A chill ran through her. Even though Roku's emotional connection was fragile, he had begun relying on the robot for comfort, for consistency. The thought of him waiting for the mechanical version of her made her heart ache. Would he ever trust her human side again? The message pulled at her resolve, tempting her to sync once more. She could be with him, even if it meant surrendering part of herself to the AI for the night. She bit her lip, pacing the room as she struggled with the decision. "I should at least check on him, right?" She reasoned with herself, but deep down, she knew this wasn't just about helping Roku anymore. It was about how much easier things felt when she wasn't fully present. Her eyes flickered toward the headset again, the soft glow from the evening light casting shadows across the device. She imagined slipping into that calm, mechanical mindset, the emotional weight of the day lifting away, replaced with cold efficiency, the desire gnawed at her, growing louder by the minute. "Just a quick sync," she thought. "It won't hurt anyone, and he needs me." But the memory of Aoi's hand on her arm, her voice full of concern, rang in her ears. "We'll figure it out together. Don't lose yourself." Her hand hovered over the headset, her breath quickening as the internal conflict threatened to overwhelm her. Was this really what Roku needed? Or was she using him as an excuse to escape the emotions that were too difficult to face on her own? Mizuki's stomach churned at the realization that maybe Yuna had been right all along. Maybe she was getting addicted to the control the synchronization gave her. But was it so wrong to want a break from the constant turmoil? The decision pressed down on her as the minutes ticked by. With a shaky breath, she withdrew her hand from the headset. "Not tonight," she whispered to herself. "I'll wait until we have a plan." Order request. Just as Mizuki turned away from the headset, her phone buzzed again, another message from Aoi. "You okay? Need to talk?" Mizuki hesitated before replying. "Yeah, I'm okay. Just needed a moment." Aoi responded almost immediately, her support palpable even through the text. "We'll get through this, Mizuki. Together." Variables. Mizuki's mental synchronization, 52 plus 0, avoided syncing out of 100. News, 45 plus 0, no new updates out of 100. Roku's autonomy, 0, no changes yet out of 100. Roku's emotional bond, 65, unchanged from the previous day out of 100. Roku's emotional stability, 40, plus 0, stable from the previous day, out of 100. States, progress of section, 1 extension completed, 5 requested. Current location, Mizuki's living room, contemplating whether to sync with the robot or hold on to her humanity for another night. Mizuki's thoughts on synchronization. "I'll wait. I can't lose myself. Not yet." Physical guide, Sailor Fuku girl with natural skin and light tone. Visual guide, brown eyes, long black hair, cascading loosely